Vaccines are widely considered one of the most important breakthroughs in the history of medicine. They have saved millions of lives, eradicated smallpox, and nearly eliminated polio. Diseases that once devastated families and communities, measles, diphtheria, whooping cough, have been drastically reduced thanks to routine immunization. Yet despite this remarkable track record, vaccines are still viewed with suspicion by many people. Even today, in an era of advanced science and global communication, distrust of vaccines persists. Why? To answer this question, we have to recognize that vaccine hesitancy is not mainly about biology or medical facts. It is about psychology, history, culture, and human perception. People rarely make health decisions by carefully weighing probabilities in a vacuum. They rely on stories, personal experiences, social identities, and levels of trust in authority. And those factors can push people to doubt or resist something that is demonstrably effective. Resistance to vaccines is as old as vaccines themselves. When Edward Jenner first introduced smallpox vaccination in 1796, many were horrified. Satirical cartoons mocked the idea, portraying patients sprouting cow-like features from being injected with cowpox material. Religious leaders denounced vaccination as unnatural interference with God's will. Parents feared harming their healthy children by exposing them to something associated with disease. These early reactions show us that suspicion is not new. It reflects enduring anxieties about purity, safety, and control over the body. One reason vaccines provoke special skepticism is that they are preventative. Unlike treatments for illness, vaccines are given to healthy people. Prevention is harder for humans to appreciate because its benefits are invisible. You can feel the relief of a medicine that cures pain, but you can't feel the disease you didn't get. A fever after a shot is noticeable, while the measles you avoided is not. Psychologists call this a problem of salience. What we see and feel outweighs what remains unseen. This is linked to another bias called probability neglect. People tend to overestimate small, vivid risks and underestimate large but abstract benefits. A 1 in a million adverse reaction looms larger than millions of cases of disease prevented. Our minds privilege vivid stories over statistics. This explains why a single anecdote about a harmed child can outweigh hundreds of studies proving safety. Autonomy also plays a role. Vaccination is often framed as a requirement. Schools demand it. Employers may require it. Governments sometimes mandate it. These measures protect public health, but they can trigger psychological reactance. When people feel their freedom is restricted, they push back, sometimes rejecting vaccines not out of specific fears, but to assert independence. In cultures that prize individual liberty, mandatory vaccination policies often meet resistance. Trust in institutions is another key factor. Around the world, trust in government, corporations, and even doctors has declined. Historical abuses have left scars. In the United States, the Tuskegee syphilis study is infamous. African American men were misled and denied treatment for decades. This created generational mistrust of medical authorities. More recently, scandals like the opioid crisis showed pharmaceutical companies prioritizing profit over people. When those same institutions promote vaccines, many view it with suspicion. Past betrayal breeds present doubt. Misinformation has also had a profound impact. In 1998, Andrew Wakefield published a fraudulent study linking the MMR vaccine to autism. The study was later discredited and retracted, but the idea stuck. Parents frightened by autism clung to the story, even as dozens of studies disproved it. Psychology explains why. Humans remember vivid stories better than dry statistics. Even a false narrative can persist for decades once it captures the imagination. Social media amplifies this effect. Platforms are designed to spread content that generates strong emotion, fear, anger, outrage. Anti-vaccine posts often use emotional, storytelling, dramatic images, or conspiracy framing, making them highly shareable. Algorithms reward engagement, so such content spreads further than careful scientific explanations. At the same time, social media creates echo chambers where people mostly see views that confirm their own. Within those bubbles, skepticism becomes reinforced and normalized. Identity further complicates matters. In some communities, rejecting vaccines is a way of signaling independence or belonging to a group. It can symbolize resistance to government, loyalty to natural health philosophies, or adherence to religious convictions. During the COVID-19 pandemic, vaccination became deeply tied to political identity in some countries. In the U.S., it often aligned with partisan affiliation. In such contexts, vaccine decisions are no longer just medical, they are statements of who you are. Once beliefs tie to identity, persuasion becomes much harder. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias and motivated reasoning kick in. People seek information that supports their stance and dismiss contrary evidence. Attempts at correction can even backfire, making people more entrenched. When vaccines are perceived as part of an identity struggle, arguments about science are interpreted as attacks on selfhood. Another driver of skepticism is how people perceive risk. Vaccines are extremely safe, but no medical intervention is completely free of risk. Rare adverse reactions exist. When people weigh even a tiny risk against an invisible benefit, the risk often feels more significant. This is especially true in societies where vaccine-preventable diseases are now rare. If parents have never seen polio or diphtheria, the diseases feel abstract, while the shot feels tangible. Ironically, the very success of vaccines makes them seem less necessary. This is the paradox of success. When prevention works, people forget why it mattered. Generational memory plays into this paradox. Older people who remember polio outbreaks understand the stakes vividly. They saw children in iron lungs or left paralyzed, and they welcomed the vaccine. Younger generations, spared such sights, fear the vaccine more than the disease. This cycle repeats across time. Skepticism grows as disease fades, uptake falls, disease returns, fear rises, and vaccination rebounds. Communication challenges also erode trust. Science evolves and recommendations change, but the public often expects certainty. When health advice shifts, it can appear inconsistent or dishonest. During COVID-19, guidance on masks, boosters, and transmission evolved with new evidence, but many interpreted it as confusion or deception. The gap between how science works, constantly updating, and how the public perceives it, expecting final answers, creates frustration and mistrust. Conspiracy theories further fuel skepticism. Conspiracies offer simple explanations for complex issues. They identify villains and hidden agendas, creating a sense of control for believers. For some, it feels more satisfying to think vaccines are part of a plot than to accept uncertainty. Conspiracy communities also provide belonging. Believers feel they share special knowledge others don't see, which reinforces commitment. Personal experience often outweighs scientific data. If someone has a negative reaction after a vaccine, or if symptoms of an unrelated condition appear soon afterward, they may conclude the vaccine caused it. Humans are wired to connect events, even without causation. This post hoc reasoning is powerful and hard to dislodge. Even if evidence shows no link, personal stories feel undeniable. When we put all these factors together, a complex picture emerges. Vaccine distrust arises from history, psychology, culture, identity, politics, and personal experience. It is not primarily about ignorance of facts. It is about how humans interpret the world. Addressing vaccine distrust requires more than presenting data. It requires rebuilding trust in institutions, acknowledging historical wrongs, and communicating with empathy. People don't distrust vaccines only because they lack information. They distrust because they feel unheard, powerless, or skeptical of authority. To build confidence, we must not only explain the science, but also address the emotions and identities that shape people's choices. Vaccines save millions of lives every year, but for some, they also symbolize fear, loss of control, or betrayal. The psychology of vaccine skepticism reveals that the challenge is not just scientific, but human. We are creatures of narrative, identity, and memory. Until those aspects are addressed, distrust will remain.